Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I've Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. And welcome. As we record this, it is November. November 2025. We are outside of Halloween and spooky times. But if you've been listening, you know that we've had a lot of delays.
Sicknesses.
Samantha has been ill. Feeling better, though, yes.
I am feeling much, much better. Yes.
Yes. So this was originally planned for October. But as we always say, we love horror. We love to talk about horror all the time. And we love to talk about religion all the time, honestly. So,
I mean, if you're from the U.S., with the current state of things, you can't not talk about it.
It's true. Oh, I didn't even get into, honestly, I think we believe this will be a two-parter. Sometimes it's hard to tell at the beginning, but I'm pretty sure. I didn't even get into much of the political horror part of this conversation, which there are political horror movies about this kind of stuff. Yes. But today we are talking about religious horror. As we've teased, we've been mentioning that we were going to get into. And we have talked about this a lot in various ways. So you can see our religious trauma episodes. I would say The Vitch, the movie, The Craft, maybe, Women in Cults, which was a two-parter, Alien, which was our first feminist movie Friday.
Ooh.
You know I love it.
Yeah.
Jennifer's Body, Mexican Gothic, Final Girl, an episode about what final girls are, Wishploitation, the episode Why Didn't You Believe Her, Black Christmas, A Quiet Place, and Blair Witch, the Blair Witch Project. Those are just some. We have touched on this a lot. It is a huge genre. And also, none of the things we're going to talk about are sponsors, and there are going to be some spoilers. We're basically having a conversation about some big themes we see in these religious horror movies, largely movies. But it is, I was reading about religious horror in comics, and apparently that's a huge thing. Religious horror in games. You've heard me talk about Silent Hill F recently, which
I guess we had that graphic novel with like the cultish twist.
Yeah. Down low.
Yeah. That was real dark.
I loved it though, but
obviously
dark.
It's still sticking with me, but it's very religious. It's kind of like almost to that level of like, we may eventually talk about the Masons, but like kind of in that conversation of like male dominated cults.
Yeah.
And what happens with that?
Yes. And that was part of the issue of wrangling this into an episode was, you can, religious horror could mean a lot of things.
But thinking about like graphic novels and like comics, and I'm like, we've hit a few.
We have. And I would actually like to, unfortunately, Samantha, I'm afraid this might become a bit of a series because we are largely
your fault, not mine. Your fault.
Yeah, this is on
mine.
me. This is on me because I did find a lot of great resources about comics and video games in this arena that I didn't have time to get into because there's already plenty with just movies.
Yeah.
And today we are primarily focusing on Western Christian religious horror. We do have a few other examples, but I would love to explore not that because I think there are a lot of examples of not that, and I would just need to give them more time. But because this is a genre I'm very familiar with, I think you're very familiar with, Samantha.
Yeah, this is probably the one that I would lean towards as a preference. And maybe this has everything to do with my psyche and like unlearning / stepping away from Christianity, and especially Western Christianity in general, coming from an Appalachian town.
Yes.
Yeah.
But okay, before we get into the conversation, I want to ask you, because I feel like we both do like this genre. why do you think you like it, even though I feel like neither of us are very religious?
Right. Again, there's something, okay, I think this is far enough removed from me, as in like when I see murder and slashers and men coming, like those kind of depictions, it kind of feels too heavy. I don't know if that's my own trauma, whatever. Coming into religion and understanding religion as I do, as well as the fact that I mean, like, I do believe there are bad vibes. I'll say it that way in many realms, but at the same time, like me being a little more agnostic more than anything else feels like it's a little bit more removed, but at the same time, it feels also explanatory. Like there's sometimes like it feels a little more explanatory, and most of the time, I feel like these movies don't necessarily have a happy ending, but they have a conclusion. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So maybe that's why. I mean, like, there's so many reasons. I might just like, again, the fantasy level of what it is. Has just enough jump scares to get me there, as in, like, the fear level. But also, again, like, I don't know much about, like, a lot of them are Catholic revolving for some odd reason.
Yeah.
And I thought it was like, we need to talk to Catholics about this level, especially when it comes to, like, possession and such. So seeing, like, that kind of feels removed, maybe fictional enough for me because I don't know a lot about Catholicism. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
Yeah. I think that a lot of it, and we're going to talk about this, and I have talked about it before on the show, but I did truly used to be afraid of hell. Like I was very, very scared. My mom wouldn't let me have The Exorcist in the house, like would not let me have it in the house. And so it felt very real to me. But after I sort of moved on and became more atheistic, I just, it's like I recognize those signs. I recognize, like, even if I don't necessarily believe it, I know what this, like, holding up the cross is supposed to mean. I know what saying this thing is supposed to be. And I recognize the music of it. And I do think a lot of elements of this, it is usually Catholic faith that we're talking about, are very fear-based. So it makes sense to me. It makes sense, but it does also feel, and this has been purposeful, which we're going to get into, but it feels a very good for versus evil. Here's how you triumph over the evil,
Right.
or maybe you don't, but here's how you could.
Yeah. These are the obvious bad guys. Although I think like a lot of the newer movies have started to like cross the boundaries. Like, were we the bad guys? No, you made us the bad guys.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But there's, I mean, I'll admit it. Like sometimes I just want to, like, there's your good guy. They won. That's nice.
Right.
And I
Which
can
why
move
shouldn't
on.
be based on real stories, because you figured out that the real people are not great.
Yes.
The heroes are not great.
Yes, which we're also going to get into for sure. And so I also wanted to answer before we get into this, why does this topic impact women, marginalized people? There are a lot of reasons why. It is, once we get into the sections on who gets possessed and why, who has the power to help people and why, who are the villains and why, there are a lot of things that honestly you could find so much writing about. This is not just us saying it to you, but in this media, there are a lot of, like, especially in this case, what we're going to be talking about, women, they're starting to feel sexual.
Right.
That's bad news.
Right. Women are trying to be independent. How dare you?
How dare you? You don't believe in Jesus, any other religion. Oh no. You're not good.
Right. Or women were the problem to begin with, so you're cursed.
Yep. Yeah. So there are a lot of themes here that I think make it perfectly appropriate for us to talk about on this show.
Why
about
not?
intersectional feminism. All right. So when we're saying religious horror, it is a pretty broad subject, but also in this case, we are narrowing in on something more or less specific. As discussed previously, yeah, a lot of Western Christianity is scary. I've said before, I had a conversation with my D&D crew where every single one of us not being Christian, was like, I grew up afraid of this. I grew up afraid of hell. If I did something bad, this is where I would go. Even if I didn't really believe it, there was a part of me that couldn't let it go.
Mm-hmm.
I would lie awake at night thinking about it. And horror movies are meant to, quote, scare the hell out of you, usually by imparting some kind of moral lesson, which is pretty much what a lot of religion is. You do this, you get punished for it. A lot of these movies use recognizable iconography and aesthetics, so we kind of recognize it. Oh, here's that church. Here's how it looks. So it's one of those, in a strange way, almost comforting things, because you're like, I know this setting. Especially if you like the genre or something like that, if that's something you're into. It also is a genre that asks questions about death and what happens after death, if anything, which is something a lot of religions are concerned with. Many of these films come with the message that if you are faithful, if you believe, again, in Jesus, usually, other religions are often painted as other and therefore wrong or evil, you will be safe. Mm-hmm. Though that changes based on the religion/belief and has been, yes, changing in recent years. We've seen some new things in recent years. This is a really enduring subset of the horror genre. Many lists of scariest movies ever made have quite a handful of these religious horror type of movies on there. And many of them, like The Exorcist, influenced films and other media that came after it. So they had this huge impact. Here's a quote from Timothy Beale's article, The Horror, Religion, and the Monstrous on Film, over at the Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs at Georgetown, which is famously where The Exorcist was filmed. Quote, horror films often serve as mythic battles of blessed order against diabolical chaos. Most often, these forces of chaos are personified in terms of racial, ethnic, sexual, and religious otherness, projected as monstrous threats to our familiar sense of order. In the course of the film, viewers reenact the myth facing our monsters, which seem to be winning for a horrifically long time, and ultimately defeating them. In the process, we are ritually purging ourselves of otherness, reestablishing and blessing the established social order, e.g., white, Christian American, patriarchal heteronormativity. Such films put a face on otherwise vague uneasiness and unnameable insecurities, to slay them and to send them back to hell where they belong, returning us to a sense of security and safety. And the interesting thing about this is, I've thought about this for a long time. When it reminds me of Charmed. When I used to watch Charmed or Buffy, like any show like that, there was when you would kill the demon, they would go up in ash. They would and go back to hell or whatever. But it was so clearly
supernatural.
It didn't kill, supernatural, but it didn't kill them necessarily. It sent them back where they belonged. So it didn't feel as like superhero movies do that too, where it's like they're robot villains. They're not human villains. You know what I mean? So you don't have to feel bad about them sending back this demon. And I do think going back to that, just a nice good versus evil that fits into that nicely of, okay, well, I just sent them back where they belong. I haven't done anything. I haven't killed anybody.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But this was actually a whole series of articles that came out about this. And I recommend them because they delve into they tackle a bunch of the different angles of this topic. And they talked about how all of these religious scholarly themes about chaos and then having the order that religion brings in. And that's sort of what some of these movies are doing, where it's chaotic, but here comes your religion, and now you have some kind of control or something. Yes. All right, so let us get started with the themes, some of the big themes. All right, let's start with reproductive rights and pregnancy and abortion. Yeah, let's go. So I've noticed a lot of these right now. This is so big right now. There's no doubt in my mind it's because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade and a continual assault on reproductive rights. So the 6 justices who overturned Roe v. Wade are Catholic, and the majority opinion included a 17th century quote from a judge who hung women for witchcraft. So, yeah, that has been a thing that is happening in religious horror right now. It's not necessarily new. It's just that there's a lot of it. So, examples I can think of. Immaculate, The First Omen, Rosemary's Baby, which first came out during the anxiety around women's rights in the late 60s. Alien, which first came out during the second wave of feminism, also when a lot of slashers punishing sexually liberated women started coming out. So Alien, I'll get into this more in a second. If you're like, that's not a religious movie, in later ones, yes, it is. It actually is. But also, I think you can kind of expand some of these themes outside of a strictly religious movie, because it's one of those things you can't take out of a culture that is raised in it, steeped in it. It's very hard for us as the audience to not see a movie like this and think about abortion and how religion in our country, in the US, impacts abortion. So that is the reason I included it. Also, I love talking about Alien. You all know it. But I did think, when it comes to these types of movies, I watched The Omen when I was way too young, the original. And I just remember thinking, like, I wish they had killed the baby. And I felt horrible for it. But it's the Antichrist. It's like the bad seed. It's the opposite of what you're supposed to feel with the Virgin Mary and Jesus. And the horror of it, in quotes, is that the woman in this, usually in this case, in this trope, is like, I can't kill the baby because I saw it's the baby. I just can't do it. My maternal instincts refuse to allow me to do it.
Well, like so many of them are like, and they eat the mother, or they eat away, and for the sake of, but they can't say no because that's their child. Yeah.
I mean, it's miserable. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not like, I can't wait to see the death of this child.
Right.
But it is, I'm like, as Antichrist. And you built it up to be this horrific child that has killed all these people.
Right. But it's kind of interesting because a lot of them, and maybe it's kind of like the Left Behind series in my head. I know there's like this correlation, but in this mind that the people who think they're right are creating this, and like we're saving these things, but these things in the end are the ones that ends them. It's like they believe that they're going to be saved by this white man, and according to Left Behind, it's the white man that's the Antichrist, which I'm like, you might not be so wrong about that one, where you go. But also in that same level of like, these are the children. What if that quote, what if this is the one that can cure cancer? That myth. Have you heard that line? I love it. But in the end, they're actually the ones that bring about the death and apocalypse of everything.
Yeah. And I mean, it is, a lot of these things we're going to talk about, I get why they're so effective and horrific. Like, that is a horrible idea.
It is interesting, again, with this religious trauma, because you specifically talk about the Antichrist, the bad seed being like orphans, because they know that they cannot not have this baby, but this baby is going to be bad, so they go ahead and give it away and put it in an orphanage, and they stew into being the bad guy, the villain. Even Harry Potter had that kind of ideal, in that, like, Tom, whatever his name is, Riddle was the orphan because he was not good enough, but he was also evil.
That's true.
And he grew into being more evil in the one who ended it all. I did find an interesting article because, in general, adoption is the idea of outcast, orphan, that conversation of being othered, the jokes that siblings play on each other, like, oh, you were adopted, just to make sure like, that's the zinger. I did find an article on Corazon.com where they talk about the newest movie, which I haven't seen this movie yet, and I don't think it's religious horror. Again, you tell me, Bring Her Back. Have you seen this movie yet?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Is it religious horror?
I guess you could make that argument. It is a brutal movie, though. That movie messed me up.
All right, I'm not going to watch it. Now that you said this, because I did think about it, because of the picture for it, the icon for it. I'm like, oh, interesting. But anyway, this is like, they are talking about this movie, and Miriam Balanesco, I'm sorry if I said your name wrong, but she talks about the idea of orphans, again, like how this is coming back around, which I feel like they've never gone away, but that could be me. And she does say this specifically in relations to orphans and kind of like cults in religion. Films like The Omen in 1976, which there's so many films with orphans and religion. And again, the Antichrist, the Christ, the Savior, the not Savior, whatever is happening. Or the reason that the mothers went crazy, which is a whole different other thing.
Yeah.
Films like The Omen, 1976, whip up fears that there's something inanely wicked about taking in a child that isn't yours. That movie's 5-year-old infant interloper is able to derail not only the conservative American family, but destroy the pillars of U.S. politics, which we're not talking about, but I think we probably should. In the folk horror, Children of the Corn, an entire society of scythe-wielding orphans run amok, guided only by pagan ritual. Meanwhile, the eerie orphan setting has spawned a horror subgenre all of its own. But it does kind of bring back that conversation of, like, what are these things? They are disrupting the perfect family. The Orphan, the actual movie, talks about this. Also, the woman ends up being a woman. Spoiler, I don't know if you haven't seen it, because I think there's like 4 more since then.
Yeah.
They actually did an SVU episode kind of like it, but not horror level. But anyway, all these things in this conversation of, like, what is the bad seed, the Antichrist, again, that is disrupting what is wholesome and pure, even though the reason they exist is everything to do with the reproductive laws that they have put into place again. And since then, it is an interesting back and forth in this conversation, because adoption, which is the easy throw out for pro-lifers / pro-birthers, but at the same time, they also think that's not somewhat evil and that these children are not pure.
Yes. And I also wanted to mention this because of what I read about The First Omen, which has been a long time since I've seen that one. But not The First Omen, because that actually is a movie I'm going to talk about. The first actual Omen.
The original Omen, which we have just referenced, yes.
Yes. But also in the conversations we've had about how conservatives try to use that as, like, adoption and abortion in their argument. And I think that's why it is relevant in this conversation about religious horror, because when we watch these movies, you see that playing out in our politics and in our religion. Those kind of fears and ideas that get perpetuated. So yeah, it's interesting and upsetting that that has had such a lasting effect. And I remember I used to work on the show Stuff to Blow Your Mind. I've never seen, there's actually a movie called The Bad Seed. And they did a whole episode on it. And I remember what they talked about. I've never seen it, but it was upsetting. Like, I remember thinking, like, oh my God. There's also something to be said about the scary child who just...
Right.
Children have been made into we're afraid of kids. I think we can say this in horror movies.
So the article going back to it, they literally say, so Bring Her Back is far more realistic in the litany of portrayals of orphans in horror that have preceded it, where a child's worst side is often explained away by the occult or possession by the devil. So reason, like literally, there's no other explanation for a bad kid who are typically orphans other than they're the devil and they're possessed.
Right. Well,
Obviously.
and that's another topic we're going to get into later. But that movie also deals with grieving mother, the grieving mother trope.
Yes, it does. And the bad father, apparently, the absent father, which we're kind of going to talk about a little bit too. So,
yep. So much to discuss. Okay. So going back to Alien, as I said, there are a lot of very weird religious elements in newer Alien movies. Usually it's a man, a very rich man, who might remind you of a certain other man that exists.
Several, actually. I mean, that's not,
who thinks that he understands religion better than anyone. He understands where the meaning of life and where it came from and all of this stuff. And I have a lot of, surprise to no one, I have a lot of thoughts about Alien. Some of the movies I wouldn't say are good, but I do think they all have something interesting to say. I think they all have something interesting to say. There is a pretty graphic, what I would consider abortion scene in one of them, in Prometheus, which is probably the most religious one. And so if you don't remember, if you didn't listen to that episode when we first talked about Alien, but there's a lot of, when it first came out, it disturbed a lot of people for a lot of reasons, but it brought up these conversations about male rape and the horror of having to give birth. A lot of people have rightfully pointed out, like, it's interesting that we focus on the male part of it because women just kind of have to deal with it.
That's just obvious.
Right, exactly. But it was very horrific. And it was a child, a thing inside you didn't want, you never asked for and had to carry to birth and would kill you, likely would kill you. And so in the recent Alien movie, Alien Romulus, spoilers.
Yeah, I haven't watched it.
Isabella Merced's character she's pregnant, but then she gets like also alien pregnant. So she gives birth to like a human alien hybrid.
Is it a super child? Okay.
And it kills her.
Obviously.
Yeah, but a lot of people I was kind of surprised how many people brought it up. And when I was researching, what's up with all the reproductive rights horror movies, and it came up. But it was also a thing where like maybe she wanted that child, but then it became deadly to her and there's nothing she could do and she just died.
There's so many of that quip, like, and so many, like, Supernatural has that with the Antichrist.
Yeah. That was I
think there's several, a lot of like, you have to die. The sacrifice is obviously going to be you, and we're all going to celebrate this, which, again, choices.
Well, interesting that you say that. Okay. Yes, this is a new thing. I did not know about this whole thing. This is why I brought A Quiet Place up in past episodes. You should re-listen to or listen to. All right. So apparently when A Quiet Place came out, there was a big conservative anti-choice movement saying it was, in their words, pro-life. Because if you haven't seen that movie, spoilers again, Emily Blunt's character gives birth to a baby in it. And she has to be silent because that's the whole plot of the movie. And so, they're saying, these, quote, pro-lifers are saying, the kid was born, so God was looking out for them. That must be it. When, if you think about it,
another kid died. And I guess that's too bad for you.
Another kid died. And the family didn't have safe access to abortion. They really didn't have a choice.
They didn't have a choice.
Also, they kind of like, I don't know what they did in previous life. It probably says in one of the other movies, but they clearly knew what was up. Like they knew how to make that like case with the oxygen in it for the baby so they wouldn't hit. Like they were clearly well off.
They also had to sacrifice a father. Like,
yes. and the conservative people were like, this is it, everybody.
I mean, that would be the epitome of pro-birth. Literally, another child died, and another person died.
Yeah, yeah, but they were all into it. I had no idea. So here's a quote from this website, Desiring God, about the whole thing. Horror films taking place in abortion clinics across the U.S. and around the world, silent assassinations in stale rooms. They wear white coats. They make death a business. They snatch children from deceived mothers who tragically pay to have them taken away. We live in a society full of this movie's monsters, and they seem so ordinary. Against all the loud, pink, pro-choice banners around us, A Quiet Place stands for human lives worth sacrificing for.
Pink? Why don't they like pink? That seems kind of random.
Well, I'm assuming this came out maybe around, I don't remember when this movie came out. Maybe it was around the 2016 election. But
was it because they wore the pink hats or something?
That's my first thought, but I don't know. It could just be women like pink and we hate women. It could
also
be
gendered. It's also like a gendered
yeah.
attack on color.
Yeah. And we're going to get into this later, probably in part 2. But I find it very fascinating, the gall to be like the horror that's happening in these abortion centers when they have crisis pregnancy centers that are literally playing horror movies and deceiving people.
Right. Deceiving mothers. I love that this whole thing sounds like the beginning of when we were talking about those horror haunted houses or those horror houses, scare houses that were literally about going to hell.
Mm-hmm.
That the Christian people put together. That's what it sounds like. But that's exactly how, like, this is the descriptor they had for their abortion clinic, quote unquote, scary house before going to hell.
Oh, yeah. And I have to say, like, watching that movie, which I did enjoy, I never would have thought, the only thing I thought was they have to survive. There was no part of me that was like, is this... All I felt was like, I'm glad she didn't die giving birth.
Right. I'm like, oh, that's not good that she's pregnant. Man, right. I wish she had choices.
It was a scary thing. Exactly. Well, apparently that's not what a lot of other conservatives thought. And I just want to shout out, thanks to Sarah Lynn Missioners, I hope I'm pronouncing that close to correctly, article on Medium. The irony that conservatives think a horror film is pro-life reminds us how little they value life for this, because I got the quote. I didn't have to go to this website. I got the quote from there.
Oh, I was like, you got lucky. I was thinking you're about to get all the bad. Oh, man.
No. You
didn't have to sacrifice your search engine.
My algorithm, not yet. Not for this. That article is great. I recommend it. It is full of righteous vitriol, and I love it. Very angry. Yeah, very, very good. Okay. Another thing I wanted to talk about in here that I see come up a lot in these types of movies is kind of the whole not having sex thing or being married to Jesus, which I guess we should have also brought up the virginity episodes. You can listen to those as well.
You can listen to those. Interestingly, for some reason, when I was trying to look up about like single mothers and abortion or like orphans, it really wanted to talk about nuns. The nuns.
Mm-hmm.
Either being the protagonist or the antagonist.
Yeah, nuns do come up a lot in this. I feel like we're just giving you a bunch of teasers, but we are going to talk about that as well. But yeah, I mean, we have discussed the trope, the very powerful belief in these movies and amongst people who are religious, but in the power of virgins or the power of the uncorrupted, and the power of corrupting them in the case of evil.
Evil.
Evil. Yes. So here's a quote about The First Omen from Dread Central from the article The First Omen, The Perfect Religious Horror Movie by Mary Beth McAndrews. This is especially true in Stevenson's direct and unabashed portrayal of sexual assault at the hands of men and encouraged by other women. Importantly, assault here isn't framed as titillating or as a spectacle, but rather as violence that destroys a person mentally, emotionally, and physically. One such scene is Les's vow ceremony, where she takes the veil in a gorgeous wedding dress, symbolizing her wedding to Christ. But as other nuns tie on her wimple, Stevenson frames the ceremony as a form of sexual violence rather than a moment of joy. Les whimpers in pain as the strings tighten and she lies prostrate on the floor. So often, religious horror wants to examine the male psyche and faith, with women simply fodder for the devil that need to be saved by the strong man of God. And yeah, so this whole article was about, the author talks about their own experience with religion and sexual assault, and about watching this movie where it does frame it. Because again, like, you know, we've been taught this generally, women have been taught getting married, great thing, wonderful thing. And when you tie in religion to it, then you're adding that sort of religious morality to it. Then when you're tying in, like, I'm getting married to Jesus, then it's a whole other level. But in this case, in this movie, which was an American woman who went to Italy for this. And by the way, I've seen this movie. I'm going to talk about it more in a second. It was interesting because she really wanted this life, and they were the ones that were like, let's lure her out into the club. The people of the church were trying to, let's get her impregnated. It's very dark. Very, very dark. Here is a quote from a Den of Geek article by David Crow called Immaculate, The First Omen, and the Blessed Rise of Pro-Choice Horror Movies. Thus, in a real subversion of the film's religious horror roots, Margaret discovers her paternal church father secretly raised her and nurtured her with the intention of always seeing her impregnated by a familiar of the devil, a demonic jackal who we learn was also Margaret's father. In other words, because the film's church believes it will empower their institution if the Antichrist appears, and thereby cause a secular world to return to Catholicism for salvation, they force Margaret to carry to term an unwanted child that was created by both rape and incest. The church even aids this defilement by drugging her like the witches in Rosemary's Baby and offering her body up to violation by a demon who is also her own father. Yeah, that's the first omen. So they brought this up specifically because the old conservative argument has so long been, you know, except for case of rape and incest.
Right.
But this one was like, no, even then, this church doesn't care. Nobody
actually encouraged this.
Yeah. I watched this movie with my mom. I just want to say, and she would just ask me these random questions, but I remember at one point she just said suddenly, "Did that man's head fall off?"
You know, there's moments when there's so many incredible, ridiculous things happening that you just can't help but one part being like, no, that doesn't make sense.
Right. I don't think, if I asked her today, I doubt she could remember anything about it except for that scene. Because it was just, that's not her thing. Like I said, she didn't let me have The Exorcist in the house. She hated the movie Constantine when I made her take me to see it in theaters.
Oh, I kind of forgot about that one.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
I did too, but she did not like it. But she watched this with me for whatever reason. She didn't complain about it, so.
There's an interesting thing with all of these religious horror that it has everything to do with the apocalypse or the rapture or any of those things happening, and they want to instigate it. So many of the good guys become villains because they're trying to instigate or punish in the name of God. by doing these things, which is an interesting, because Constantine did the same thing. Gabriel, was that the angel that she plays?
Yeah.
But like, it's not the only one. There's so many in this conversation that they would be deemed as the good people causing the chaos again.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Immaculate and The First Omen came out at the same time, like very close together. And they're similar in a lot of ways. I would say The First Omen I preferred, but I like the ending of Immaculate better.
So is The First Omen in relation to The Omen?
Yes.
Because I've never seen this, but this plotline sounds really familiar, I will say.
Yeah. But it's hindered by the fact that it is part of a 40-year-old franchise, I think. So it's a prequel. So she's
it's a
giving
prequel
birth
even.
to the...
to Damien.
Yes.
Is that his name? Yeah.
Yes, Damien.
Because isn't there a movie called Damien in that franchise as well?
I think so. It's a long-running franchise. And it also has several spin-offs. Several comedy spin-offs as well. But I will say Immaculate did have the kill the baby ending that I...
Well, there's that.
Yeah. But they were very similar. And also both of them did hammer on the point that it was like mostly men in power, but women were also helping perpetuate these things. So it was not just...
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Kind of like Rosemary's Baby.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. Okay, this...
And Mother.
Yes. I didn't even put Mother in here, but yes, absolutely. I have a quick Nosferatu aside. The new one.
I have not seen it.
Okay, so I wanted to do a whole episode on it because I had so many thoughts when I watched it. And we might still, I don't know. But I was so fascinated by it because on the one hand, it had so many... It's interesting when you see a movie that has so many of these ideas that like, she needs her husband. That's the problem. And then you have like the Nosferatu, which I've seen the original. It's been a minute, but there's this whole idea of like that sexy virginal maiden. You have sex with them and then you're the only one that can redeem them, or the salvation. That's the only thing. And then the interesting thing is too, if you haven't seen Nosferatu and you were very interested in, because it's the same as the prequel. So I feel like the spoiler part is kind of out the window because that movie's ancient. But if you really want to not be spoiled, then just skip 2 minutes. But, you know, she basically offers up her body and they have sex until sunrise and he dies because he can't resist her.
Son?
Because he's a vampire, Nosferatu.
So she kills him with sex.
She kills him with sex, but she also dies.
Well, good, I guess.
And so I got to the end of it, and I was like, is this a sex-positive movie? Because I'm trying to figure out the whole time she's thinking about this vampire who, at a young age, she felt kind of some attraction to, not necessarily sexual, but she felt some kind of attraction to. And she has all these men in her life that are really controlling and all this stuff. And she made the decision, but at the same time, like, they had sex until they both died. I don't know. So
the way you're describing it just sounds like it's just a horny movie that people...
I think I'm probably doing a bad job at describing it, but that is the ending. It's a long movie, Samantha. There's a lot of other things that happen. So I have another quote from that Berkeley Center Georgetown series. And this is about the original. Some may read Ellen's sacrifice through the lens of Christian models of devotion paradigms, often specifically gendered and gory and sexualized representations of the suffering of female saints and martyrs. However, it's notable that the male figures we meet in the film are incredibly passive victims of the vampire or are simply ineffectual. Perhaps more interesting, given the perennial patriarchal need to control female sexuality, Ellen feels drawn to the vampire throughout the film. The narrative allows a woman not only to show desire, but also to direct it toward an image of alterity, the inhuman face and form of Nosferatu. So I guess, you know what? You can also listen to our episode on women heart monsters. Yeah. I would like to come back.
That's where I come back to.
Nosferatu is such a douche, though. Anyway, I would love to come back and talk about it. I wrote like a whole outline before I'd even asked Samantha. I was like, no, I got some thoughts about this.
Okay. Is this an essay that you're going to put into as an outline?
Maybe. Recently, when Joey was on the show and we talked about New York Comic Con, afterwards they were like, you should publish these essays. And I said, who wants these essays? I think they're just for me. I don't think they're for anybody else. But if we do an episode, I'm ready.
That's going to be the essay. All right. I like it. Let's go.
Mm-hmm. I do want to say there are also actual horror movies that are very much in the vein of like, you know, your bad Christian horror movies that do depict women who have had abortions going to hell.
Right. It's usually the same ones that sexualize women to the point of like, all they care about is.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that does exist. I honestly don't really want to give any more. I don't want to shout out any titles or anything, but that is a thing that exists. I would say it's probably pretty similar to what you might see in a crisis pregnancy center. And lastly, before we close out on this part 1 of our religious horror study, we did mention recently, we've been talking about marriage horror. You can see our episodes on Silent Hill F for that, which isn't really religious, but it's. I feel like when I personally think of marriage, at least for a long time, I've associated it with religion here in the US. So for me, a lot of marriage horror does feel slightly religious. Examples I could think of, Ready or Not has a kind of satanic cult religious aspect to it where we might have to sacrifice this bride depending on what happens with the game that we're playing. Midsommar, they're not married necessarily, but I think
something about relationships.
Bad relationship and kind of a cult thing going on. So I see that in religious horror. And then loss of a partner in general leading to some kind of possession or haunting. I think that's a big trope. And I've actually been reading about it recently. And I wanted to do another episode on mental health and horror, but it just it spiraled out of control. So couldn't do it for now. But, you know, that's sort of like the grief aspect, which is something we're going to pick up on in part 2. But I think we should probably call it for now.
Okay.
Yes, because we do have a lot more to get into. And listeners, if you have anything you would like for us to talk about, or examples you want to shout out, please let us know. You can email us at hello@stuffmomnevertoldyou.com. You can find us on Blue Sky at Mom Stuff Podcast, or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff Mom Never Told You. You can also find us on YouTube. We have new merchandise, a Cop Bureau, and we have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks as always to our super producer Christina, our executive producer Maya, and our contributor Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff Mom Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.